Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of Keystroke Success Training on ACT. Welcome here. We're happy to provide these once a month, so keep looking for the emails that come through every month as we go through the topics. Also, if you have any suggestions for topics, please email myself, Vic at kqc.ca, or Vic at keystroke.ca, or you can email Michael as well. He'll give his information in a bit. A couple things. Michael Cadleb, he's our support manager for Keystroke. Will be leading the training session today. So we're very pleased to have Michael doing that for us. And a couple housekeeping items. You can ask questions throughout. We will monitor them as we go along and probably break after each section to answer questions. So please put them in the questions and we will get back to you. The other thing is at the end of the training, I will jump on and show you the link in terms of where to find all our training sessions, not only today's, but all the other ones on our website. And after the webinar, so by tomorrow, we'll have today's up there. And we will also start emailing everyone tomorrow in terms of the link for today's webinar so that you get them right in your inbox. So with that, I'd love to pass it over to Michael. Oh, by the way, my name is Victor Cron. I'm with VP here at Keystroke as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Michael.
Thanks, Vic. Vic, just make sure you can hear me and you can see my X screen, correct?
Yes, I hear you, and I see the business card on the left, address, status, and last activities.
Okay, great. Excellent, excellent. Okay. Once again, welcome everybody. As Vic said, I'm Michael Cadleb. I'm the support manager here at Keystroke. Many of you probably already have interacted with me via telephone or web meeting or email. And so it's nice to see you guys on the call today. Today we're going to cover defining fields and designing layouts. Okay, so this is sort of I would call it admin territory for this, and you do have to be an admin user to do these kind of things. Okay, so a standard user in ACT cannot add fields to the database. In addition, we are currently using the desktop software, so everything you're going to be seeing today is through the desktop software. Now, some of the things that we're going to be doing can also be done via the web, such as defining fields. Designing layouts can also be done via the web interface. However, the web designer for designing layouts is not quite the same as the desktop designer. So what we usually recommend people to do is, if they are using web with a remote database, is to, once they create those fields via the web, via tools define fields, that they do the actual design of the layout on the remote database. They'll have much better luck and much better accuracy with their layout doing it that way, just because of the way the two are designed. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do today, we'll start with the defining the fields, because you can't add anything to your layout until you have it in as a field within your database. Okay. And to do that, we go to our tools menu in ACT, and then we go to define fields. Another caveat here is, if you are using a shared database on maybe you have you're self-hosted on your own server and you're sharing it out with multiple users, if other users are currently in the database when you do this, you'll get a little pop-up message that says so-and-so is logged in, you need to lock them out to do this. Okay, so you basically need to lock the database anytime you're creating fields, or in this case defining fields, within your database. So it's usually either good to maybe give them a heads up, or do it, either maybe before, after hours, or lunchtime, or sometime when it's a downtime, to avoid, taking up people's usage of ACT. They will get a message on their end if you do end up locking it, because you do have the power to lock their database after 3 minutes. They'll get a message that says the administrators locked the database, and your database will be closing in 3 minutes. Okay, so if they're not, let's say maybe they're not at their station when this happens, within those 3 minutes, ACT will close on their computer, so that you don't have to actually go around each computer and turn it off. Okay, so you do have the power to actually lock them out if they're not around, or if you're at different locations. Okay. Okay, so here's where we create, number one, fields, and also drop-down list as well. Okay, and we'll go over both of those today. And the places you can create fields for, the 5 different sections in here. So you have the companies section, the contact section, group section, opportunities, and products. Okay. We're only going to focus today on the contact section. Everything else is pretty similar. There are some little differences here and there, but everything else is pretty similar. And just for the sake of time, we're just going to focus on the contact section. Okay.
A quick question, Lubs.
Yeah.
Michael, why is the defined fields grayed out and unusable?
Okay. So a couple of reasons for that to happen. One would be you're using a remote database. So if you have a remote database, it will be grayed out. You can only do this on the master database and or a web database. Secondly, let's say you are in the master database or the hosted database. If you're not a admin user, as I mentioned before, if you're only a standard user or lower, it will be grayed out as well. So that basically means you don't have permission to do that if it's grayed out. Okay.
Thank you.
And for those of you that use custom tables in your database, creating fields for custom tables is not in this section. It's a part of its own section under the custom tables menu on your layout. We won't be covering that today. We'll cover that in our custom table class in a few months here when we go over all the custom table information. Okay. So if you're wondering about that, that's going to be in that training session. So today we're basically going to focus on creating contact fields and then also modifying the layout for those contact fields as well. Okay. So we're in the contact field section here, and this is going to list all the fields that are already in your database. Okay. So this database I have here is one I just sort of created, the other day. It's just a demo database, and I created a couple fields already, but most of these are just stock fields that come with ACT. Okay. So when you create a new database in ACT, you're going to have most of these fields in there already. Okay. If you're doing this on your own database, you may have even more because you may have, or somebody else may have created fields in that database, whether it be recently or years ago. Okay. As your database, as you update from year to year to different versions, your database, those fields continue on within the database. Okay. You don't start from scratch unless you're creating a new database. So let's go ahead and create a new field and show you all the different options when creating a new field. So let's say I wanted to create a field called, I don't think we have it in here, industry. I want to know the industry of this client. So in the upper left here, there's an option, create new field. And the field name, it automatically puts in new field 1. So I'm going to rename it there. Okay, industry. And then you're going to have the field data type. So this is going to be the type of field that this field is going to be. And let's just sort of go through that list and explain just about each one of these, okay? So the first one there we have is address. So the address, if you create an address field, what it actually does is it creates an address block, okay? So let's say you wanted to create a maybe a winter address for somebody because your clients, maybe in the winter they go south somewhere for the warmth, okay? So you just click in winter address, and then it actually creates all the address fields. So it would create winter address 1, winter address 2, address 3, winter city, winter state, and winter zip code, as well as winter country. So it creates all those fields based upon just clicking one field when you choose address. Okay. Annual event, that's going to create a field, a date field that happens annually. Okay, like such as a birthday, or renewal date, or anniversary, or things like that. Okay. Calculated, if you select calculated, it's going to allow you to choose a formula to write different calculations. So if you wanted 2 fields to add up to equal a third field, or maybe you wanted to create an age field.
Michael, can you just test your screen? I'm frozen on enter field name and type under character. Oh, address. Okay,
Yep.
I got it now.
Yeah, I haven't moved anything. Yeah, I haven't moved anything. So
all right.
just sort of. Yep.
Thanks.
No problem. Okay. As I said, calculate allows you to calculate fields, including date fields. So if you wanted to, for example, have the age of a person, you can calculate the years since they were born if you have a birthday field, or maybe years since they've been a client of yours if you have when they became a client, things like that. Character field, that's probably the most common field used, I would say. Basically allows you to put anything into that field, a number, a special character, any kind of letters, things like that. Currency is going to be a monetary field. So if you want to track dollars, like annual revenue, things like that, you can make a field a currency field. A date field is going to be different than an annual event. A date is more of just, it's still a date field, but it allows you to, it doesn't have the annual event to it. So annual event can do lookups on that field via the lookup menu. The date field is just going to be a specific date, maybe the date they bought the software, okay, or the date they became your client. You're not really going to have something it's not going to trigger every year for that, okay? Or an annual event is something that happens every year, such as a birthday or a renewal date or an anniversary. Date and time is going to be similar to date. In addition, it's going to have the time in that field as well. Okay, so you have a date with the time on there. Decimal field is going to be a number with a decimal. So not just going to be a whole number. It's going to be an actual, it's going to be 10.72, okay, or something of that nature. You can have as many decimals as you want in there. Email field will be an email. So typically when you create ACT or create a new database, you're going to have two email fields that come with it, the main email field and then a personal email field. But you can add additional email fields if you like. And this will, anytime you see an email field in ACT, you see that little underline and in blue. That's going to be like that. And if you were to click on that link, it's going to create a new email in your, if you're using Outlook to link it, it'll open up a new Outlook email. Initial caps, that means it's the initial letters of each word in that field will be capitalized. Okay, so maybe if you're doing some kind of special formula or some kind of special coding, like an account number or something like that, or a customer number, and it has to be the first letter is always capitalized, this would be great for something like that. Likewise, if you needed everything to be lowercase, you would choose lowercase from the field type, so every letter will be lowercase when you create that field. The memo fields can be similar to like a notepad. Think of a notepad that you have on Windows where you can just type in anything you want. That's what a memo field is going to be like, and you can make the field itself as big as you want on your screen, and that's where you just sort of type in trivial information about things that you want to know about that client, whether it be a customer note, maybe driving directions to their location, different things of that nature. A number is going to be similar to the decimal. The only difference is there's no decimal point, so it's a whole number. So instead of 10.75, it's just going to be 10 or 11 or 12 or something like that. So that would be useful for like to track number of employees at that company. A few more here to go through, and then we'll actually create one. The phone one, that's going to allow you to keep track of a phone field, okay? And it comes with about 4 or 5 phone fields: phone, mobile, fax, home phone, okay? But you can create additional ones if need be. Picture field, you can actually create a picture field so that if you want to have a picture photo of that of your client in your database, you can do so. Time. So earlier we talked about date and time. It has both in the field. This one would have the time in that particular field. Uppercase, similar to lowercase, just reverse. Every letter is going to be uppercase in that field. URL address, basically a website field. Okay. And then yes, no is going to actually be a checkbox. So if it's checked, it's yes or true. And if it's not checked, it's false or no. Okay. So those are the different field types that you can create.
Okay, a couple of questions quickly, Lubs.
Sure.
Can the field data type be changed?
So this is hard coded in here. This cannot be, you can't add a special type of field type if that's what the question means. But if you're asking if you can change an existing field type, it really just depends on what the field type is. Some of them you can't, for example, yes, no field, you can't change to something else. But a character field you can change to something else if you wanted to.
Excellent. Also, next question, is a memo field searchable?
Yes, all these fields are searchable. The easiest way typically to search a field once it's in your layout is just with a right click, and then it's going to bring up a menu that says lookup, and then whatever that field name is.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to create a character field here. It's going to be a character field, I should say. And then down below here in the field behavior, 4 check boxes. So the first one, allow blank. Okay, so when that's checked, that means you can have a blank value, meaning you can leave the field empty if you don't have that particular data right away. Now, the reason to uncheck that would be if you wanted a field to be required. Okay, so maybe you wanted this field, you always wanted the industry field to be filled out no matter what the client is. They can't move off that record until that box is filled in with data. Okay, so what would happen is if somebody created a contact and that box was unchecked and they didn't put something in the industry field, they wouldn't be able to move off that contact. They would get a message indicating that the industry field needs data in there before you can move forward. Okay? Generate history. This is useful for fields where the data changes often. Okay, such as field out of the box that's like that is ID status. A person can move from like a cold lead to a prospect to a customer. With the generate history, it's going to create a history anytime that field is changed and throw it in your history, and then you'll be able to see that in your history, the date that that field was changed from cold lead to prospect to customer. Okay. Primary field. This field, as it says there, it's going to copy that field data whenever you duplicate a record. So when you have a record and somebody at the same company and you want to duplicate it so that you don't have to enter the data all over again, you would go to the context menu, select duplicate contact, and then duplicate from primary field. And so right now the primary fields are by default, I should say. Everybody can have different ones. By default, it's going to be your address field, your company field, and your phone field. So when you duplicate it, all those fields get duplicated so you don't have to type in the address again. Now industry, that's usually the same thing across everybody at the company. So you probably want that to be a primary field in this case. Use drop-down list. So if you're going to have a field that you're going to have a preset of items that you want to choose from, a drop-down list is a great thing to have. Some of the reasons to have it are for ease of data entry. So you can just pick it from the list and or just start typing it and it'll populate automatically. Secondly, it saves you from typos. So when you have, if you have a shared database with 10 or 20 users, everybody might enter a data a little bit differently. Well, when you go to do lookups or any kind of reporting, the data could be in there differently and it's going to throw off your numbers. So drop-down list is always, I would always recommend this whenever using a character field that you want to have sort of a preset data in there. So we're going to use one. Now, if you don't have a list already created, which we don't have one yet for industries, we just say create new list, which is that first option. And then when we hit next here, it's going to ask us to create that drop-down list. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create it. And I usually advise people to name the drop-down list the same as the field name. This way it's consistent. I can't tell you how many times I logged into people's databases and their drop-down list is something totally different from their name, the field name, and it really gets confusing then. The drop-down list can be a different type as well. So you need to match it to the field type that you had when we defined fields. So ours was a character, we need to keep this as a character. Anytime you see a description in the sort of those drop-down fields or field list, it just means it's just for you to add additional information. If industry itself didn't really describe what it is, you could add additional information here. But industry is pretty describable, so we don't really need another description. These other two boxes here are very important. Okay, so this first one, allow users to edit items in this list. So if we have that checked, any user can edit the list when they're working in the contact layout. You may want to have that set up that way, or you may want to lock it down so that only an admin can come into this section here to actually change the field section, to change the items in the drop-down list. That's usually your personal preference, and it could depend on the field itself too. Some of the fields, such as city, you may want the users to add cities as they come across new cities. But maybe an industry, because we only have we only want to track these 10 industries or whatever, we don't want to have the users just add any industry in there. We want to have control over that. So we would uncheck that. And then when you do that, it automatically unchecks the other one too, which is automatically add new items the users enter to the list. So if you have that checked, that means that anytime you type in something into the field, it automatically adds that to the drop-down list. So you want to be careful with that one because it can really, grow your drop-down list if you're not keeping close eye on that. So here we can enter new values into the drop-down list. We just hit the add one, type in the new values. You also have the option to import a drop-down list. Okay, I've already created a little drop-down or a little text file here. So I'm going to go ahead and import that list here to show you that. Okay, import the industry drop-down. And then there's my drop-down list now. So it saves a lot of time, especially in the larger list that you have. to import those rather than having to type those all in there. Finish. Okay. So now my industry field is in here. Just double check, and now it has use drop-down list for industry. Okay. I want to hit next here to show you some of the other things that go along with this field here. So this is customizing the field and list behavior. The first option there is limit to list. When I have that selected, it's only going to allow me to choose things that are on that list. So that's important as well, so that people just can't type something into that field. If I only want them to choose what's on that list, I want to have that checked. If I want them to have the ability to also type in something ad hoc, then I would uncheck that. Allow multi-select. If I have that checked, it's going to allow the users to choose multiple items from that list. Okay, so if a certain drop-down list can be more than one thing, I would check that option. Show descriptions. If my drop-down list has both items and descriptions, I would want it to show the descriptions. In this case, it didn't, so I leave that unchecked. This one's important here, the type ahead. I mentioned this earlier about when you're typing in that field, this allows you to, for speed of entry, you probably want to have this checked more times than not. A couple other things here that you can do. You can have a default value. So if the majority of your customers are, let's say, in the computer industry, you can have the default value be computer here. So that every time they enter a new contact, computer populates that field. Okay. Now you can obviously overwrite that once the data is in there, but this just saves you some data entry moving forward. Okay, so you can set any field with the default value. Field format. So that would be similar to, let's say you're creating a social security field. You know, that it has a certain format. Oops. I have to take that out of there if I'm doing that. Okay. So then the data would just enter like that. You wouldn't have to type in the dashes. You just type in your number, it puts the dashes in there for you. Okay. So that would be good to also maybe for like account number. If you have an account number with a certain format, it's always this many letters, then a dash, and then this many letters. You can do it that way. Field length, it defaults to 50 for characters. The max is 4, or if you knew the field wasn't going to be that large. Okay. So that's totally up to you. Linking to a company field, that's if you have a company field that matches that field. Okay, and I believe this one does. Industry. Yeah, there it is. So the field lengths have to be the same. Let's see. I think that one's 75. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Yep. So for those to match, what that means is when you change the data on the company side of things, so if I change the data in the industry field on the company record, it's going to then change the data in the industry field for all the contacts that are linked to that company. So if I have 20 contacts at a specific company, I don't have to go into 20 contacts and change their industry. I change it at the company level, and then it gets linked down to the contact level for those 20 contacts. Once again, another time saver. And on this last page here, field triggers. This allows me to do one of two things for a field. Launch an activity series. So if I use activity series in Act, I can have it launched based upon a field changing or leaving the field, or I can run like a program. And by programs, that's going to be like a custom program of some sort, so that when I leave a field or enter a field, that custom program runs in the background and does whatever I want it to do. Okay, that's sort of high level stuff here. So let's go ahead and finish this. And it's just anytime you change the length of a field, it's just going to let you know that it may result in loss of data. Now, when I go up in field length, obviously I'm not going to lose any data. But let's say I went from 75 to 50, and there was some data that was longer than 50 characters, I'm going to lose that data. Okay. So just be aware of that if you're ever shortening a field for whatever reason. Okay. And I'm just going to create a couple other fields here just so we can put them on the layout just of different types. I'm not going to do each field type just for the sake of time. Just going to do a few. So we'll do a yes, no field here. We'll call it active. Okay. So whether or not that contact is active, meaning maybe you only email people that are active in your database because some people maybe aren't clients anymore, so they're not active. So we'll call it active, and then that's a yes, no field. create one for customer notes. We'll create a memo field called customer notes. Okay. All right. So we have a few different field types selected. Now, before we go to our layout, design the layout, I want to go over a couple more things over here in the defining field. Okay. So the other thing you can do over here is field security. Okay. Over here on the left-hand side, underneath field task. What that allows you to do, not only have one user in this database, so it's not going to make a whole lot of sense in this database, but in your databases, you're going to have multiple users, more than likely, if you usually have multiple people at your company, and all the users will be listed here. Okay, so what you can do is you can highlight that person's name, edit their access, and say, okay, for this field, I only want them to see it, read only. So that means they only see the data. They can't change that data in that field for all the contacts in your database. Or maybe I want to say, you know what, I don't want them to see anything. I don't want them to have any access to this field at all. Then I would give them no access. Okay? So that you can do that per field. So right now it's looking at that customer notes field, and that's the access they're going to give them. So for each user, you can give them different access to that particular field, which is great because you may have different departments accessing the same database. But maybe you don't want the support department to see the sales department's data for whatever reason, so you can hide those fields and or make them read only if you don't want them to change it as well. Okay, that's to be found under field security. Under list tasks, this is another place where you would manage the drop-down list. So when we click that, it's going to allow you to manage any of those drop-down lists, the ones that already exist, so you can create new ones, or you can edit the ones that you already have in here. You can also manage a product list. So this is going to be your opportunity product list. So if you want to create that here, this is where you would do that. You can also do it in the opportunity section as well. You would add your products that you're selling their clients. And similar to that would be the managed process list, which is also an opportunity item. So you have your different processes that you can modify, create, delete, etc. in this section here. All right.
Okay.
So yeah, go ahead, Vic.
Do you want some questions now, Lubs, or you almost finished?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because we're going to go over to design layout. So let's do some questions.
Okay. If I want to create a time zone field, what data type would I use?
Okay, so time zone field. Let's think here. Because you're really just putting in EST, PST. It'd just be a character field.
Character field. Okay.
Unless they want to put the actual time in there. So I guess. Well, let me follow it up. So if they want to put the actual, well, it wouldn't be the time. Yeah, it'd be, if they're just putting the time zone, it would just be the person's, the time zone itself. So character field. And it could be, they could do all uppercase if they wanted to.
Okay.
So character uppercase, yeah.
And how can you change the field setup options after a field is created?
Okay. So let's go in the field here. Let's just take one of these user fields, and let's say I wanted to change user 10 from character to something else. Okay. So when you do that, when you after the fact, as I think I mentioned this earlier, you only have certain options now that a field's already been created. So as I see here, there's no address option, and there's a couple other ones that are missing. I can't think of them off the top of my head. Okay, phone's not on there. There might be a couple other ones that are missing too. So it just depends on what field type you had originally, and then so this one you can change a couple of them too. If we go to a memo field, for example, I think you have even limited. Let's try a phone field. So the phone field, you can't change the type. Once it's a phone field, it's always going to be a phone field. Let's see here. Memo. Same with the memo. Okay. So there's certain field types you can't. The character is the one that you probably have the most flexibility with. What I usually tell people to do, if they need to change it to something that's not on that list, create a new field, and then you can always copy the data from the old field to that new field. It's probably the best way to go.
All right. Thank you. Was the list of industries somewhere to copy? You populate it with a list of industries. Is there a specific spot you grab those from?
Yeah. So I created a list on my own. I just created a Excel file, saved it as a text file.
Okay, yeah, so you can create a text file from anywhere if you pull this off the web somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and Lori, yes, this is recorded and you will get a link to it tomorrow. And at the end of the webinar, I will show you where you can download it right from our website as well. What is the limit for a character field again, please?
450.
450, okay.
450, yeah.
How can you change the field setup options after field is created? I think we covered that one already, right?
Covered that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If shortening a field, will all the data be lost or will it be truncated?
So it'll just be truncated. So let's say, for example, we went from that 75 to 50, and you had a bunch of words in there. After the 50th character, everything else after the 50th character will be lost. Anything up to the 50th character will be retained.
Okay. My tools / define fields is grayed out. Why?
Okay. We talked about this earlier. But if we're on the call, one of two reasons: either permissions, you're a standard user or lower, or you're working in a remote database, and the remote databases cannot define fields. Only the master databases can, or a web database.
And what's the best way to show a range of prices for database? Example, 500K to 1 million, 1 million to 1.5 million, etc.
Gotcha. So that would probably be a character field, and then I would have a drop-down list with those whatever price points you want in there. This way, people aren't typing them in all the time because they probably would make mistakes. So you have your drop-down list of those particular ranges, and the field type would be character.
Can changes in groups, adding or deleting contacts be captured in history?
Changes, any field change can, as long as when you have that field change, or I'm sorry, when you have the as long as you have that checked, that will be recorded to history for that particular field.
Okay, thank you. And what's a oh sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the difference between a character field and a memo field?
So a character field has a limit of 450, and a memo field is basically unlimited. And once we get it onto the layout, you'll actually see the difference visually as well. Another difference is a character field can have a drop down where a memo can't. Memo is just sort of a free form, like I said, basically like a notepad section.
All right. Can fonts and font sizes be determined here or just some preferences?
We don't control any fonts right here. We control all that in the layouts, actually, in the design layouts, which we'll see here in a second.
Okay, and Ryan, your question, you should probably email service@keystroke.ca to get more clarification on your tools and define this grayed out. So we'll deal with that one later. All right, that's it for the questions on this section, Michael.
Okay. All right, so next thing we're gonna move on to is actually putting these new fields that we created onto our layout. So to do that, we go to Tools, Design Layouts, and once again we're working in the Contact section, so we're going to select Contact. Okay, so one of the first things I do when I go into my Contact layout is I usually save it as a different name when I'm modifying this, okay? Unless I have a layout that I already have in place and I want to move forward with that one. But as you see here, the layout name here is the basic Contact layout that comes with ACT up here in the upper left-hand corner. So if this is sort of the first time I'm designing a layout for my company's database, I'm going to want to save it as a different name just to make it unique to my company and keep those basic layouts as they are in case I need to, start from scratch again and go back to those. And to do that, I go to File, Save As, and we'll just call this one Keystroke Training. Save it. Okay, so now as you see up here in the upper left, that new layout is saved, Keystroke Training. The other thing I like to do is, as you see here, because of my screen size, the canvas of my layout is sort of only taking up half my screen. So I want to expand that as much as I can here. And by doing that, in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see these little white dots, or little white square. And as my mouse moves over it, I'm going to be able to expand that. Okay, so make that larger. Okay. So a couple other things I'm going to want to do here. So this is your layout, and this is where things are, the fields that you have in ACT are going to be on your screen. Okay. So, and this is where you can change the different fonts and styles and things like that. So, for example, if I wanted to change the contact field font here, I would highlight it and then go to my font list here. I'll just pick one out of there and change the size, and I wanted to change the color. Okay. So that's where I would do any of the font changes for the actual layout. All right. So the next thing I want to do is actually create the fields that I created. Okay. So let's put some of those fields onto this layout here. And I could put them up at the top of the screen, or I could put them up down here on these bottom tabs as well. Okay. Or I could even create a new tab if I wanted to. I'm just going to put them up here in the top so we can easily see them. So to add a field, I'm going to go over here to the left here to the field button. And just drag a box, which is then going to open up my field list. Okay, so I'm going to go down here to industry, add that field. Okay. I'm not going to worry about alignment right now. I'm going to wait till I have my fields on the list or on my screen, and then I can maneuver them around. Okay. So the other field I had was a memo field that I had created. So I'm going to go to Memo Field over here on the left, drag open another box, customer notes, and add that field. And as you see here, it only lists the fields that are memo fields. Okay, when I choose that. And these fields weren't on the original field list either. Okay. So some of the fields you have to click that special button there. What I'll also do is I'm going to do a picture field. That over there. And then my yes, no field. Okay. So now I have my fields on my layout. Now I want to sort of arrange them onto my layout in a certain way, and line things up and all that good stuff. Okay. So I want to line them up to everything underneath here, underneath this status column. So to do that, I'm going to click the headings, and I'm going to hold Control as I click each of these headings. Okay, so you see them each get highlighted. And then I'm going to click on the toolbar here, there's a line left option. I'm going to click that, and that's going to line everything to the left. It's going to line everything to the left, the one that's anchored. And the field that's anchored is the one that has the white squares around it, not the black squares. Okay, that would be referred by. Now everything aligned to the left there. Okay. And then if I want to drag these fields up to the top, I can highlight them all at one time and drag them all at one time. So I'm going to highlight them, drag a mouse just below active, highlight those three fields and the field labels. And I can use right now I'm just using the arrow keys on my keyboard, using the up arrow. Sometimes that's a little bit better than actually using the mouse if you want to keep everything in line. Since I already have it left aligned, I don't want to ruin that left alignment. So by hitting the up arrow, it goes straight up. Then when I sort of got them where I want them, I can unclick it somewhere else. Okay, so now the fields themselves, I want them to align to the left of these fields up above them. So I'm going to highlight those and then anchor it to the referred by again. Once again, using the align left. Okay. And as we see here, the industry field here, this looks like a different font and different size than referred by, doesn't it? Okay. So I want to make sure everything looks the same here. So referred by is using Tahoma 9.75. Industry is 8, using 8 fonts. I want to change that 9.75, and I want to make it the same size as this referred by field. So I highlight that, making sure the referred by is once again the anchor field. Go to my format menu. There's an option for make same size, and I'm going to do both, so it's the same width and then also the same height. better. And then I'm going to change, actually, I'm going to change all these. So the label itself is only 9. So I need to change these 3 labels to Tahoma 9. And if they do that where they sort of, word wrap, you can extend these labels a little bit to make sure that they fit in one line there. And then this customer notes was 975. Let's make sure that's the same as the other one as well. This way there's uniformity throughout my fonts there, okay? Now this customer note just sort of runs over into letter sent a little bit, okay? So I don't want to do that because I can't see that label. I'm going to change this field size here. Let's make it a little taller, but just more narrow. Okay, and because it's a memo field, I can do that. So I can make this field as big as I want it to be, okay? That memo field, where a character field, I think somebody asked about what the difference is. A character field, it's only going to be one line, okay? And then now, if we look here, this active and this checkbox, they look a little bit off, don't they? Okay, I want them to be totally centered. So I'm going to highlight both of those, go to Format, Align Middles. And that's going to middle them so that they're aligned across the middle like that. Okay. And if I want to bring the photo field over a little bit, maybe I'll put the photo field underneath latest activities. The same thing here. I'll set the fonts accordingly.
So the key is your anchor is always one with the white dots around it, right?
Exactly. That's the key. Yep. And you can switch it too. So once you have these highlighted, let's say I have all these highlighted here, and as right now the last email is the anchor. If I want to switch it, I just click on another one. So if I want last reach to be the anchor, I just click it and you'll see the white dots change. Okay. So there we go. We got that in there. Another thing you probably want to do, especially if you're doing a lot of layout changes, is to make sure you save your changes as you go along here. So I'm just going to hit that save button real quick here, this floppy disk. Because there's nothing worse than doing all these changes and then your power goes out or something happens, your computer just shuts down accidentally, and all those changes are gone. So you want to make sure as you're going through there making changes to your layout, make sure you hit that save button so that it gets saved periodically. This way, if it does go off for whatever reason, there's minimal changes since your last save. Okay. Now, if I want to change the background, let's say I want to change the background color of this top tab up here. Okay. I want to bring up what's called the properties menu. I'm sorry, the properties window. And that's under the view menu and then properties window. So right here is telling me the background color is this code here, 251, 251, 251. If I click that drop down, I can select I have a bunch of different options here. If I want to make it light green, okay? Basically make it whatever you want there. Now you may want to make what's called a gradient layout. Okay, so if you make it, you can actually create an image like in your Paint Shop Pro or Adobe or whatever. I've created one with a light blue gradient, which means that the color sort of it starts light and it gets a little darker. It's a little bit easier on the eyes. So if you were to do that, you can make that the background image. So right here below there, background image. And then it has just a little better feel than a solid color on it. Okay. And if anybody needs help making one of those, just let me know. Or if anybody wants a copy of this one, I can certainly pass it along as well. Email me after class, and we can definitely pass it. It's just a JPEG file. It's a real small JPEG file, but just adds just a little bit more pleasing to the eye when looking at that, than versus just like a solid color on that. Okay. You can also add. Let's say you want to add your logo to your layout. Okay. It's very simple to do. All you really need to do is open up that image in like another software. So in this case, I have Paint Shop Pro open, and I'm just going to copy the image, right click copy, go over here into the layout, right click paste. And then all you sort of need to do is just, make it extended or whatever to however you want it. Okay. So once again, the View Properties menu, that allows you to do that background color, and it also allows you to do, if you have something highlighted, like a field highlighted, and maybe you're not sure of the field length, it's going to tell you the size and everything, the location of that field as well. Okay, and everything's under this drop-down menu here. So for example, let's say you had a real large layout with multiple tabs all over the place, and you knew you had a field on the layout, but you weren't sure where it was, but you knew the field name, you knew it was the mobile field. You just go to mobile field, and it's going to highlight it over here, and it's also going to tell you where it's at, okay, by the location and everything. Okay, so sometimes you might need that if you have a ton of fields on your layout. I've seen clients that have literally they'll have 300 fields on their layout scattered around. It's tough to find those fields. So if you're just looking at the screen, but if you're going through this properties drop down, they're alphabetically listed, and then you can find them a little bit easier. So it does come in handy. And this is also a place where you can change. Let's say I wanted that mobile field to be changed to cell. So I have it highlighted, and I just change it here where it says text to cell. And then it changes that label to cell. Okay. All right, so let's get out of here. Let's save these. Let's save our changes, and let's see how these fields act once we get back into the layout itself. Close down the layout. Okay. So as you remember, we didn't change the basic contact layout, right? We saved it as a new name. Okay. So when you do that, obviously this layout looks like it used to, but we never changed that one. We saved the one called Keystroke Training. So let's go there. And as we see here, I have a photo field, and it's nice of we put in Ken there. He loves to represent the United States when he comes to town, so figured that was an appropriate picture for him. So the logo's still there. If somebody's active, you just check that box. As I mentioned with the customer notes, you can type in any kind of data you want there, and it just word wraps it for you. If you happen to go past how far the field is, it'll give you a scroll bar.
That's a question here with a memo field.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just sequential, or can you use enter to create space and type in vertical list?
So if you didn't have a word wrap, you're saying like to create a list?
Yes.
I'm guessing. Okay.
Yeah.
So here, let's delete that. Let's say you want to, item 1. So enter doesn't take you to the next one. It's sort of a unique little formula here. It's Shift J. Wait, not Shift or Control J. Control J to get to the next line. So after I'm typing number 2 there, I do Control and the letter J, and it takes me to the next line.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have more questions, but I'll wait till you're further along here.
Yep. Industry. Oh, I have to change that. I forgot to change the field format. So let me go back into there real quick. Yep. Okay, so now we can just select anything from that drop down. Okay, and as you notice, there's no ability to edit that list here. Remember, we turned that ability off to edit the list. Okay, so if we look at another drop down field, for example, ID status, that has the ability, that field has that ability to edit the list. That's what I meant by anybody who's a user can edit a drop down list like that. Whereas in the industry field, they would have to be an admin user to go into tools, define fields, and then change the list from there. So that's the difference for that. Okay. And that's pretty much what we set forth to cover today with defining fields and designing layouts. So Vic, if you want to let me know some of the questions we have, we can get those answered in the remainder of the time we have.
And if some of these are specific LUBs to individual users, you can just direct them to email you directly as well.
Sure.
So one question, can a box be added for holiday cards to run a report on?
Okay. And before I answer that, just so everybody knows, this is my real data here. So anybody who doesn't have my, I mean, like I said, I've emailed a lot of people, but if you don't have my information, that's my phone number and that's my email if you need to email me directly. Okay. Can you repeat that one back about the holiday card? Sorry.
Let me just go back here. I just got a whole bunch of questions here. That's why I'm just.
Yeah, I think it was about a holiday card checkbox, maybe.
Yeah, holiday card and run a report, a field with holiday cards.
Yeah, so I'm guessing if they want to have a holiday card checkbox is what it sounds like, and then say, okay, bring me up a lookup of everybody who has that check. So any checkbox you have, you can quickly look that up by doing a right click in the field, and by field I mean just a little box, and it's going to say look up, and then whatever that field name is. So if you've created a field called holiday cards or whatever, it's going to say that field. You look it up, and then you want to say anything that's true, okay? True being checked, and then it's going to give you a lookup of those people who have that checked, and that will, then you can print them out, do labels, whatever you need to do for that.
Excellent, thank you. Do you know if the ID status field can be made wider? People who have several ID statuses don't always show because of the short field.
Sure. So you can do one of two things. One, you have to increase the field length if you're getting cut off with characters. So you'd have to go in here and increase the length to, I think it's 256, so increase it to whatever, 450 is the max. You can go up to 450. Then if you wanted to see it, see the actual data, then you would go into Layout Designer. You go to that field, and you can make it, as long as you wanted it to be. Obviously, adjust the other fields accordingly, but.
Excellent, thank you. If you change an existing layout, does a new layout get applied to already existing contacts using it?
Yes, so the layout's not really specific to old contacts or new contacts. Anytime you change a layout or create a new one per se, any of the contacts that are currently in your database, they will see that, or you will see those contacts with that new layout. Now, obviously, some data, they might have data in those fields, because if there's new data or new fields, there's going to be no data in there just yet, but the fields themselves will be there.
All right. When you're importing a CSV or Excel file, why do some fields not map even though they have a column for that data?
Okay, so that sounds like an import question for something else. So you may want to, whoever had that question, if you want to email me directly.
Yeah, Shirley, email michaelk@kqc.ca.
Yeah. And feel free to include the file if you want, because maybe there's something wrong with that file or something. So feel free to send me the specific file you were trying to import. I can take a look at that.
All right. And what's the difference between having a customer notes field on the contacts homepage versus notes section listed below under the contact screen?
Sure. Okay.
Where you have additional, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Great question. So this one is here would be like a quick notes that you can look at. It's going to always be at the top of your screen. Because you see now I'm on the activities tab and I don't see that notes tab right now. So that would be something like real quick that you want to see, like, this person's a great guy, or this person, last time we talked to him, he was he had an attitude, so tread lightly. Or maybe how to pronounce their name if it's a unique pronunciation or spelling or something like that. So it's just something that you want to have in that user's eye really quickly, versus them having to go to the notes tab to sort of dig through some notes in that. So
all right.
That would be the main difference there.
When I create a new field and position it, I can't tab to it from the previous existing field. Any way of doing that?
Sure. Yeah, actually, that's a great question. I neglected to go over this as far as the tab part of things. So let me show you that. So in design layouts, you want to make sure that you're going, from field to field. So basically contact, company, title, department, etc. So to view the tab order, you go to View, Tab Stops, Show Tab Stops. And the ones that are currently in there should all be pretty well ordered, okay? ID status is 19, 20. Now this goes to 73. So I want to change that to 21. So to change it to 21, I right-click in the field, then I just type in the next tab number, 21. And then the same thing for these next couple. So you're just basically writing in right-clicking in the field, and then just typing the next number, whatever order you want to go into. Now, if you're sort of starting from scratch or you have fields that are all over the place, what I tell people to do is go to View, Tab, Stops, Clear it. Okay, now everything, there's no number anywhere, and then you just left-click in the field order as you want to go through it. This is very quick, as you see here. As you see, the next number just populates each field as I click it. So now it's going to go in that specific order. Yep.
The last question. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So the only thing here is, as you notice, the save icon is grayed out. So to get back to the save icon, you need to go back to View, Tab Stops, and then just uncheck Show Tab Stops, and then you can save that and get out of there. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Regarding photos, is there a guideline for photo file size?
The photo size itself can be different. So let's go back into the layouts here.
Because they said they've had problems with very large photos.
Sure. So I think for this one, the best, and you need to go into View Profile. View Properties window. So for photo, I just have size options normal. So that means just going to take the normal size of that photo. And I think that photo I had was like a 200 by 200 file size. But you could do auto size, which will auto size it to the size of your file. Now, if you have a file though that's like 1,000 by 1,000, it's going to take up your whole layout. So what I would recommend is if they have a photo that's similar to the photo size I have right here, to probably shrink your photo to 200 by 200, or use the stretch image. The stretch image will automatically resize it for you. Okay. Now be aware though, when it resizes it, it may look a little different, than you want it to look. So, so you can either try stretch image, or prior to attaching the file, resize it in your photo editor to like a 200 or 300, square by square photo size. Those are probably work the best.
Now, Kathy, I'm not sure about this question. It says, maybe Lubs, you understand, in doing that, ID status was not numbered. How did that happen?
In doing that, it was. The tab style, it just was way out here because that field's so long. Here, I'll shrink it. You'll see the number. Maybe you just didn't see that up there. View, tab stops. There we go. So I had extended the field way out to the right, so that she might not have seen that number.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Can I use a form made with fill-in cells like addresses and contacts, and be able to have it communicate with the file and pre-populate?
I think I would need more information on that. I'm guessing you're talking about like some kind of a web form, possibly, which can be done with some other software. But whoever sent that, they can just shoot me maybe an email with the specifics on that, and I can get a better answer for you.
Okay, Paul, email michaelk@kqc.ca. And how to add tabs on the lower taskbar.
Okay. So to do that, once again, design layouts, contact. And let's say I wanted to add one. Now I'm just going to call it custom fields for lack of a better term today. So that would be once I'm in the layout designer under the edit menu and then tabs. And so this shows me all the tabs I currently have there. So I can also delete tabs if I wanted to. So if I don't use the user tabs, I can delete that one. We'll just delete that one. And maybe like some of the ones that are hard coded in the ACT, which are going to be these basically anything from web info up, you can't delete them, but you can remove them. So if you don't use opportunities, you can just hit the arrow here to move to the left. Same with secondary contacts or web info. If you don't use any of that information, you can just hide those tabs. And if you want to add a new one, you click the Add Tab button. Type in the name of that tab. And then you can move it wherever you want to. So if I want it to be maybe right after groups, I can move it up. And now it's right after groups. And there it is. And then I would just do what I normally do. Add a background color, put fields there, anything I want to do there. So for example, I can move, I don't think I showed you how to do this, but I can move fields. Let's say I want to move these latest activity fields from up top here to that new custom field tab. So I just highlight them here. And I can just drag them down to that section there. Save it. Go back to my normal view, and then I'll have that new custom fields tab with those fields moved from the top there.
Excellent. All right. For the last thing, what I want to do is, Michael, can you go to keystroke.ca, or do you want me to pull that up on my screen?
Go ahead and pull up your screen if you would.
Okay, I'm going to change presenter to myself now. And so to find these, our webinars, you can just go to handout or to keystroke.ca and go to ACT and to under ACT Services, and then go down to ACT Training. Sorry, I just got to move my panel over here. ACT Services, ACT Training, and then free ACT Training videos. And that will take you to this page here. Now, as you can see here, we have ACT Training videos, ACT for Windows, ACT Cloud, ACT eMarketing, Keystroke product videos, and Keystroke Success training videos. These are the ones that we do every month. The one that you're watching today will be up here tomorrow. So you can just go through and you can review any of the old ones we did, as well as the one we just completed. And as of tomorrow, you will get an email with a link to the site where you could watch the videos and any of the other ones. So that's it for today's training. I really want to thank Michael for the great job he did and everyone for attending. So again, if you have any questions, you can email myself, Vic, at keystroke.ca or Michael K at keystroke.ca. Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you very much, everyone else, for attending. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.